You're listening to Stand Tall and Own It, the podcast for high-performing female leaders who are ready to make an impact by discovering the safety that comes from understanding their own value and exercising their own authority. I'm your host, Andrea Johnson, and I'm here to tell you it is time to just truly be you, my strong friend. It's time to stand tall and own it. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Stand Tall and Own It. I'm your host, Andrea Johnson, the intentional optimist. And I've been having so many conversations lately about awareness. Those ABCs, the things, the levels of awareness, the assumptions, beliefs, and conditioning that we need to be aware of in order to grow or to facilitate change. And you're not listening to my podcast if you're not interested in growing or changing. I assume that. And I understand that we're all like trying out new tools and looking at growth as a constant process. We don't ever finish growing. There's never a time in our lives that we stop growing, or at least that we want to stop growing. But here's the thing. What happens when you discover or become aware of something that you want to change? It's real easy to say, oh, just change it. Just do it, right? Just let it go, right? Just let it go, whatever. We want to do that. The problem is, and Nike has made a huge business on just telling people to just do it. But here's the thing, if we could just do it, if we could just move on, if we could just let go, we'd all be professional athletes. If we could just do the workout, if we could just move forward. The problem is that in order to grow or move forward, we need to change. And when we realize that there are things that need to change in us that are really kind of negative, or that we didn't want to know was there, or that we're surprised to find are there, then we have some work to do. And I'm talking about things like prejudices, beliefs that we may hold, things that we thought were true. We may have damage to repair. We've discovered there were words spoken or actions taken, and a simple apology just may not do. There may be things we need to let go of. We need to maybe let go of relationships or people in our lives, or maybe associations. And there are always feelings associated with any one of these actions. These are not things that we just do and don't experience any ramifications or blowback or anything from them. Some of them are small. They may, if they're small changes and they're small things that end up being really positive, they give us feelings of freedom, give us feelings of elation and movement or momentum. But if they're big things, maybe they're things you've held on to for all of your life, like me, and I'm going to give a little bit of my own story here today. Some of these big things bring with them the need for and the process of grief. And this is why I changed my podcast title, or at least one of the main reasons why I changed my podcast title. And I'm going to share some of my personal journey, because I say this all the time. John Maxwell says the first person you lead is yourself. And so I have gone through some things. I have learned about myself. I have made changes. I have figured out how to lead. And therefore, as I've said before, I share with you, right? So when you become aware of something that's holding you back, that no longer serves you or is detrimental to others, maybe it breaks down relationships, this is an invitation to change. I was telling someone today that when you look at your ABCs as this iceberg model that I've shared, you can go back, we'll probably link it in the show notes, the episode where I talk about how your ABCs are like an iceberg. The little bit of the iceberg that's above the water is not the damaging part. The damaging part, it might show you off to be somebody that really is unaware of certain things in your life, and maybe there's things you need to change, but the real damage happens with the stuff that's below the waterline, the stuff that we don't know is there. That's the stuff that breaks relationships. That's the stuff that is detrimental to others. And when we receive that invitation to change, there's all kinds of feelings that come along with it. Some of us will immediately go, oh my goodness, yes, I need to change and I'm on it. Some of us will say, doubling down, not going to do it. Nope, right? But there are feelings that come with it that are associated with understanding that you may not have thought, spoken, or acted in a way that you're proud of. And you just have to be willing to walk through that process, and there is nothing else to call it but grief. Some of these griefs are going to be small, and they're fairly easy to walk through. Some of them are going to be really big, just like there's small changes that bring elation or freedom, and there's big changes that might bring grief. There's also small grief. There's grief that you could turn around and say, I am sorry, or that was thoughtless of me, or I don't want to be that person anymore. But then there's big grief that there seems to be no way to fix. There seems to be no remedy for it. There seems to be overwhelming feelings of despair for what you may have done or said. And you just need to be aware that those are the things that are going to come. If you don't grieve who you were, you will never be able to embrace who you are, my friend, who you were designed to be and who you can be. So just come a little closer if you're listening or if you're watching. Let's take a look at what we're talking about here. We're not talking about the loss of a family member or a friend, or like I've talked many times about the loss of my mother. We're talking about the loss of things like ideas or beliefs, the loss of security in knowing the answer for anything. I went through this a lot in my spiritual walk. The loss of your identity. Perhaps it's an identity that you've worked on for many years. Maybe you decided you were a specific career choice, like a lawyer or a doctor, and you realize, I have to change direction. That's a loss of identity. It may be the loss of identity with a people group that you've always associated with, or with a demographic, or with a political party, or with a religious group. All of those things are pieces and parts of your identity that as you change, you may need to lose those, or you may end up losing them as a result of your change, which also could result in the loss of friends or an affinity group. Now, I don't want this to turn into a blues, boo-hoo, sad thing, because while they are very real losses and you cannot discount all of them and the grief that comes along with them, because that would be doing them a disservice, you've got to be willing to say, on the other side of grief is relief. On the other side of all of this is what I'm actually looking for. So I do want to break down and talk about what grief really is and how it shows up. And just like any traditional grief, like the loss of, I'll just use my mother as an example, you have to walk through the stages of grief. You cannot usually, sometimes you can jump around between different stages of grief, but most of the time you have to walk through all of it. You have to be willing to experience all of it. These are the valleys associated with the amazing mountaintop experiences of growth, right? If you go up to a mountaintop, you're going to have to come down. You can't just sit on that mountaintop. If you want to keep growing, you have to go down into the valley and go up to the next mountaintop. So let's look at grief. What is it? I'm sure if you've dealt with grief at all, you know the traditional 5 stages of grief, which are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. These are the ones I was raised with. And I've seen them all. I've seen them in many different ways, but I actually found one that I'm going to share with you. I'm going to share a link in the show notes to the 7 stages of grief from BetterHelp. Now, BetterHelp is not my sponsor, but I'm sharing their link anyway. I would welcome BetterHelp as a sponsor for this podcast, but I do want to share them because I think they're more applicable to what we're talking about here. And I'm going to share them, and then I'm going to apply them to my own personal situation and give you some concrete examples. So their first one is shock and denial. So it kind of sometimes, I'll give examples in a minute. So shock and denial is the first one. Then there's pain and guilt, depending on the situation. There's anger and bargaining is the third. Their fourth one is depression, reflection, and loneliness. And what they do is they've combined a few of the traditional 5 and then added a couple in. The, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth one is an upward turn, which I love the way they talk about that. The 6th one is reconstruction and recovery. And the 7th one is finally acceptance. Now, how have I seen these exact stages in my growth journey? Well, I'm going to use a little bit of a controversial subject, but it's very real. It's something that I have dealt with. I have not been I haven't been completely transparent about it because sometimes we're not sure how we want to talk about things and how we want to actually tell people about some of the things that we've experienced or the journeys that we've been through. So I'm going to be a little bit high level talking about them, but it's basically my prejudices. These are multiple, and the more you dig in, if you have any prejudices in your life, you will figure out that you don't have one. You have multiples. We all do it. It's something that is kind of conditioned in us. It's that stuff below the waterline that's going to hurt other people. For me, they are, and this is not the only ones, but for me, they are things like privilege, confronting my prejudices regarding privileges, my beliefs or my conditioning regarding patriarchy, and then prejudices regarding people groups. And saying those things out loud is still very difficult for me because we all want to live in shock and denial stage and be able to say, no, I am above all of this, right? So for me, shock and denial literally came out in words and phrases like, not me, but I've always said this, or I've always believed that. Especially when it comes, and we see this a lot when it comes to privilege of any kind, white or otherwise. You might hear things from people like, or even me saying, but I have a friend who is from this people group, or I have a friend that does that, or makes these choices. And so therefore, I don't have that prejudice, or I don't have privilege. I was not raised with any kind of money. I'm poor, but unwilling and denial of being able to see where those things might be true about us. The second stage of pain and guilt, this is the realization for me, or it was the realization, and it's still, I think I go through this every so often with different things, but it's that realization that what I was denying and what I was shocked about was actually true. I was party to perpetuating ideas, beliefs, public discourse, or worse yet, being silent about certain things. Not stepping up, not speaking out, allowing things to go by, knowing full well that it was not right, and allowing it to happen. The guilt associated with that, the pain associated with those realizations, they still happen, with those realizations is huge. If you are in this stage, my friend, because this is what in the Christian world we would call lament, if you are in this stage, please know it will pass. It is not something that is going to last forever, but it is a natural kind of lancing of the boil, so to speak. It is a natural process of getting those things out, letting your body be in pain about it, letting your mind and your heart be in pain about it, and giving yourself grace. There is no use in beating yourself up about any of this stuff. I tell my clients, and I hope I've told you this many times about awareness, we know what we know when we know it. We didn't know it yesterday, but we will know it tomorrow, and we will be responsible tomorrow for what we know today. I wasn't who I thought I was, and I was so sad, and I was in so much emotional pain, and I felt so much guilt that, man, that next step was just natural for me. That anger and bargaining, this was much bigger than I expected to be. I was not a bargainer. I'm still not a bargainer. I don't know. It's just not the way I am designed. But some people go into more of a bargaining stage. I went into pure, white hot anger. Anger at me, anger at patriarchy, anger at privilege, anger at anybody who was trying to tell me otherwise, not in a denial sense, but almost like the pendulum had swung so far in the other direction that I had to just like stop speaking about certain things. I had to stop speaking to certain people. If you feel like going back on my social media feed for the last 3 years, you will notice there are certain things I just eliminated from my feed. I just stopped posting about certain things because I was just so angry about some of the realization that I had about my own conditioning or my own prejudices or my own privilege, and the realization of it that I just couldn't see anything else. It was like looking through a fog of red all the time. And, I've heard like this female, and I read a book that kind of pointed out this idea of female rage, like this underlying rage. I had so much anger. Literally, I just withdrew. Because I knew that if I was out engaging, I was going to do something that would not just damage my business, but would completely damage relationships. to the point where my sister actually reached out and said, "Are you okay?" And it was the most healing moment because I was able to say, no, I'm really angry about all of these things. Whether or not anybody who listens to you or reaches out to you agrees with you in that area or what you're angry about, if they're willing to listen to you, please take a hold of that and celebrate the fact that you've got someone who will listen and who will allow you to vent your rage and to be able to speak your mind and to get all of that out in a safe environment. Find yourself a safe environment, because getting that out will lead you into those next steps. It will help you get through it. Unfortunately, the next step is depression, reflection, and loneliness. And it doesn't sound fun, but it's better than anger in many ways. I mean, some people will say no, but for me, it was like walking through mud. I spent, and I'm going to put some dates to this, right? I'm going to say 2017 through maybe 2019 and 2020 was a lot of pain and guilt and denial. And there were quite a few things that happened in my life that just kind of set me up for this and set me on this path. And then the anger was, 2021 was pretty much all anger. It was just, I don't even know how to talk about it. If you put anything on it, it just bubbled up in anger. And I had to be really careful in different places. And in my family, I didn't want it to like affect my relationships with my husband or my son, but it just was a lot. 2022 was probably an entire year full of depression, reflection, and loneliness. It just was walking through mud. I could tell that there was a light at the end of the tunnel. I knew for a fact that I would get through it. I didn't know how long it would last. And most people didn't really know that I was there. And I want to say that because you may not have realized, if you've known me or if you've been in my circles since then, or back then, you may not have known that I was in that phase of grief. But it was there. It was very real. And for me, it was very reflective. I wasn't quite as lonely as some people could be. But I think I just had this low grade depression throughout all of 2022. And then as I entered 2023, this beautiful idea that they've put in here is this step number 5, is this upward turn. All of a sudden, and there were some circumstances that actually aided this too. So I want you to recognize that there are things in your life that will happen that will kind of potentially trigger you into different phases of grief. But this was an upward turn. I felt like I could breathe again. Now, I was exhausted. I had been walking through mud for a year. I had been white hot anger the year before that. I had been in nothing but pain the year or two before that. And so this upward turn just felt like all of a sudden a weight was lifted. And most of 2023 was part and parcel of learning to breathe again, walking through what they call their 6th step of reconstruction and recovery, where I discovered that I could reflect better, that I had some courage, that I could turn around, as my friend said, and look down the mountain and see how far I'd come, both in my business and in my personal growth. And I want to say, I'd love to say I'm in full acceptance now and everything is fine, which, if I'm real, I don't know that I'll ever get to full acceptance. I think I will always consistently be in this reconstruction, recovery / acceptance mode, knowing that this is what growth feels like to me. There are plenty of little things that I will grieve along the way, but this is what growth feels like. It feels like this constant reconstruction of who I want to show up as and how I want to be there. So if you find yourself in a situation where you are not happy with how you're showing up and you know there's things you have to change, this is the process, my friend. It may be big, it may be small, it may be a week, it may be 2 or 3 years like me, but I want you to know I made it. I made it through, and many of you did not know that I was going through it. You can make it as well. And here's what I want you to know. These are the big takeaways. That was grief. That's what it looks like. But I want you to know, my friend, I do not want you to be unaware as you walk into the personal growth. If you've never walked through personal growth, or if you're new in the journey, or if you're really looking to become a leader, I don't want you to be unaware that it's not all roses, okay? It's not all unicorns and butterflies. I wish it were. And if anybody's selling you that, please walk away, because that is a 10-cent bottle of vinegar. It is not all easy. If you want awareness, you will find things that you need to grieve. If you want to be aware of how you are going to grow, you will find things you need to grieve. People ask me all the time, Andrea, what if I don't like what I find? Well, when you go looking and digging around for your core values, you're going to find them, and they are good and they are beautiful. But you're also going to uncover some things that you don't like and that you need to change, or that you want to change, or that in order to move past into the next step, you're going to have to change. I have been working so hard in my garden, out in my different gardens this year. I have lots of perennials, lots of hostas. They all needed to be split. Some of them I split into 12 pieces. They were that big. But as I dug into the good soil and found and split these beautiful plants, and now I enjoy the lushness of where they are because I've put most of them where I want them, I discovered a lot of grubs. I was dismayed to find out how many grubs were in my soil, and I had to do something about them. I needed to be willing to do something about them. I find them gross. I don't like to look at them. I don't like disposing of them. I don't like anything about them. But I had to be willing to do something about that. There's a very benign and easy way to say, when you go looking to turn over your soil and to do good things, you are going to find things you don't want to have. But a good gardener knows the first thing you have to do is turn over the soil. So you need to be aware you're going to find things that you need to grieve. But understanding you, understanding your core values will give you a solid foundation upon which to stand, or sit, or kneel, or fall down on your face as you grieve. It will give you the authority to understand what you want and what you don't want. It will help you see your non-negotiables, the things that you cannot live without, the things that make you the unique person that you are. And when you see the things that you don't want, you can actually see them for what they are. For me, I am still learning to see things for what they are in my life and say, I don't need that. It either doesn't serve me, it doesn't serve people I love, or at worst, it does damage to people I love. So knowing your non-negotiables will give you the ability to see the things for what they are. It will also give you, when you know yourself, it will bring your passions and your convictions to the forefront. They're going to be amplified. They're going to feel bigger. They're going to feel louder. And it's going to give you the confidence to move through the grieving process that you need to do, big or small. Again, these are the valleys associated with the amazing mountaintop experiences of growth. So my invitation to you today is just be willing to get your hands dirty, my friend. Dig up all the stuff, the good, the bad, the ugly. Turn the soil over. Uncover your core values. Be willing to say, here are the grubs, and I'm going to get rid of them. Or the root rot, or the really bad soil. I have some stuff that I've dug down below, and it's that Virginia clay filled with rocks because I have a pool. And so instead of putting down good soil around the pool, they dug all the stuff out from underneath where the pool is now, and they just dumped it outside. So it's a lot of rocks and it's a lot of clay. But then once you uncover them and you turn over that soil, be willing to grieve all the things you no longer need in your life. Remind yourself that there are some things that are little that you can get rid of easily. We took 2 big loads to Goodwill this last week. There was no grieving involved. It was easy. It was good. But there will be some bigger things that you really will need to grieve. But then take advantage of the positive things will help you walk through the stages of grief with hope. This is where intentional optimism comes in. It's a really good way to guide you as you walk that path of grief. I have people ask me every day, are you sure, Andrea, if I go looking, am I going to find, what if my core values are bad? No, they're not. I actually had an interviewer ask me, a podcast host interviewing me ask, boy, that one was hard to get out. Andrea, what if I discover ego? And I'm like, well, do you consider that a core value? He's like, oh, well, no, I guess not. That would be something, that you now have the invitation to get rid of. This is what's on the other side for you. On the other side of the grief is reconstruction, recovery, acceptance, and freedom, my friend. If you want to start that journey, start it with a positive plan. Don't go looking for the grubs. Turn over or look for moving the plants and splitting the plants and figuring out where the plants can go and discover the grubs along the way. It is much easier to take when you have something positive to look at. A positive plan could include your core values. If you go to my website, right above my head is a button that says Free Core Values Exercise. If you click that button, it will take you to a landing page where you can get a one-page PDF download that will walk you through the entire exercise. At the bottom of that page, if that's not enough for you, if you need some help, if you find there are things that you need help confronting, if you find there are things you need to get rid of, if the grubs are really big, or if you just can't figure it out on your own, I have a course that you can actually walk through, and there's information there right there on my website, or you can contact me about individual coaching for working through your core values or executive coaching to help you work through some of this stuff. I don't want you to do this alone because you're not. You've got this. In the grieving process, if you're there right now, you're not alone. There's plenty of us who are like walking that on a daily basis and walking through those stages for different things that we have. Some of them are big and some of them are small, but we can do this together. You're not alone. Let me know how this was helpful for you. Please reach out and DM me on Instagram or LinkedIn. I'm happy to chat with you. If you tell me you listened to this episode and that's why you're contacting me, I will know it is not spam. You can also email me and say the same thing. Andrea, on the episode about grief, it really resonated when you said this. Email me at andrea@theintentionaloptimist.com and I'll email you back. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe, share it with your friends. Let me know how this is reaching you and what is helpful to you. We can do this together. We're all grieving again on some level. Let's do it together. Let's stand tall and own it. Until next time.